And this is Ken Kraetzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio. We have a special edition for Memorial Day. We have a chance to talk with two chaplains served in the United States military for distinguished careers, both retired, and I have the pleasure of working with on a special project to upgrade the chaplains monuments at Arlington National Cemetery. And with us, we have from the National Conference on Ministry to the Armed Forces, located in the Washington, D.C. area, the executive director, and that is Captain Jack Lee, retired from the United States Navy. How are you today, Jack?
I'm good, Ken. Glad to be with you, and thanks for bringing me here.
Our pleasure, as always. And someone I've had the pleasure to work with now, gosh, almost a dozen years since we met. When we first discovered the need to upgrade the monuments and add to them at Chaplains Hill in Section 2 of Arlington National Cemetery, we have Navy Rear Admiral and Rabbi Harold Robinson, the former chair of the National Conference on Ministry to the Armed Forces and chair of its Chaplains Hill project. Admiral, how are you today?
I'm absolutely wonderful. Great news. But before I get to the news, I just want to make sure that your listeners know that you are a great soul that has been working on this project and honoring chaplains for those 12 years. And Providence College and upstate New York and the Sons of the American Legion ought to be very proud to have you.
Hear, hear.
Well, thank you both very much. It's been really an honor and a privilege and really a unique opportunity to work on a project at Arlington National Cemetery, our nation's really most sacred place, and to work with you two gentlemen and also the team that we have put together to advance this project. Now, Admiral Robinson, why don't you start by giving our audience a little bit of
the great news. The great news is just before this interview began, the office of Senator Warnock of Georgia, newly elected senator from Georgia, confirmed that that Senator Warnock had jointly introduced into the Senate a bipartisan legislation, along with Senator Bozeman, to upgrade the Protestant and Catholic memorials on Chaplains Hill and to make the process of work on Chaplains Hill and authorization for that much more streamlined, cut through a lot of the red tape that we've been hacking away at for the last 8 years on these two monuments that are missing 26 names, 25 Protestant names, 1 Catholic name. And if that bill passes, and we hope people will reach out to their congressmen and senators and say, hey, what about the Chaplains Hill memorial legislation? We'll be able to honor those 26 along with the nearly 200 other fallen comrades.
Very good. Now, this has been a very special project. Chaplains play a unique role in the U.S. military, going back to the very beginning. Jack Lee, why don't you give us a few remarks about the history of the service of chaplains?
Sure. And thanks again, Ken, for having me. The Chaplain Corps was established by General George Washington almost a year before the Declaration of Independence was signed. He wrote a letter to the Continental Congress in July 29, 1775, asking for the establishment of a military chaplaincy, and that's where the Army dates their beginning. The Navy came along later in 28 November 1775, and then the Air Force came out, of course, out of the National Defense Reorganization Act under President Truman in 1947. But chaplains have always been there sharing the hardships with the forces. And the thing about chaplains is that even before we had an all-volunteer force, pretty much all chaplains were all volunteers. So most chaplains could have had an exemption for service because they were clergy, because they had congregations or they had synagogues. They could have gotten out of military service. But pretty much from the very beginning, the chaplains said, if my people are going forward, I'm going forward with them. And I think that is what epitomizes chaplaincy and why it's so special.
And
Absolutely. Go ahead.
There's one, if I can tag team with you on that. The chaplains did say, if my people are going forward, I'm going forward with them. But the chaplain goes forward unarmed, with only the armor of faith and conviction, and with a unique mission to support the ethical and moral and spiritual needs of the very often very young men and women who fight and sometimes die for our freedom, and to support their families that are home worrying about their warriors.
Absolutely. And the service of chaplains is revered by members of the military. Chaplains work together, representing hundreds of faith groups today. And perhaps, Admiral Robinson, tell us a little bit about why the service of chaplains is considered so valued by the U.S. Armed Services.
Well, first of all, I can't speak for the United States Armed Forces writ large, but I can tell you that chaplains help preserve the humanity of the men and women who are in what is inherently an inhumane, unconscionable condition. War, there is something pernicious and evil about war, no matter how just, no matter how justified. The conditions of warfare are beyond description, and for our men and women not to lose themselves in that, they really need faith, and they need chaplains to help support them in that faith. A step further, you know, the average age of the U.S. Armed Forces has gone down by about 6 years since World War II. Don't have the exact number, but in World War II, we didn't start drafting the folks until 21 years or older. Eventually, that age changed over time. But today, the average age of a flight deck on an aircraft carrier might be 20 years old, and that includes the old guys who are flying the planes and that have been in for 7 or 8 or 9 years. So the chaplain brings a level of wisdom and maturity that both commanders and warriors appreciate.
Absolutely. And Admiral Robinson, you and I met when we discovered after an American Legion, Sons of the American Legion visit to Arlington National Cemetery, we found Chaplains Hill when we were going to find the Catholic Chaplains Monument. I have 3 Providence alumni who are honored on that memorial, 2 chaplains who died in World War II service, 1 in Korea. And we thought to look on Chaplains Hill for the 4 chaplains named in the immortal 4 chaplains lost in the Dorchester tragedy in February of 1943. And we found the Catholic priest who was lost and the 2 Protestant denomination ministers, but it was quite apparent to us there was no place for a rabbi to be honored. And we knew there was a rabbi from Brooklyn among the 4 immortal chaplains. So we called the Jewish war veterans, and they said, you got to talk to Admiral Robinson. And when you and I spoke, you said, Ken, we got to make this happen. So we've been working on these projects now for a dozen years, and it's really been a pleasure. Why is Chaplains Hill so important to you?
To me, I'm going to tell you that the story you told epitomizes Chaplains Hill. you're a Roman Catholic. A NCMAF is 95% Protestant. And maybe not quite, because there's Roman Catholic and NCMAF as well, but it's overwhelmingly Protestant. I'm obviously Jewish. You look up at Chaplains Hill and you see those monuments. Now that the Jewish monument is added, that is a visualization of America's religious breadth and depth. You have Catholic, Protestant, and Jew. Fortunately, we have not yet lost a Muslim, Buddhist, Sikh, or any other group, but you look up at Chaplains Hill and you are reminded of the diversity that is America. And that picture is worth many sermons and many books. Now that it's, and by the way, this project headed by a rabbi to update the Protestant and Catholic memorials, that only happens in America. It doesn't happen elsewhere. And I can go into detail, but we don't need to. But it does happen in America, and it's a very precious legacy that we have in America.
Absolutely. Captain Jack Lee, tell us a little bit about your organization, the National Conference on Ministry to the Armed Forces, the service it provides to the Armed Forces, providing chaplains from hundreds of faiths.
NCMAF, the acronym, began in 1901 when the War Department, notice that name, asked the Protestant Churches of America to form a Protestant Chaplains Commission. And so they did. And shortly thereafter, or about the same time, the Jewish Welfare Board was established, and the Archdiocese for Military Services for Roman Catholics. The goal was, from the War Department's perspective, that there would be a standard of excellence for military chaplains. The previous model had used pretty much what I would describe as a regimental model, which is that the local pastor, priest, rabbi would leave with the regiment from the village or the town or the city. And the War Department wanted to professionalize and standardize chaplaincy. And so they asked for the help of initially the Protestant churches. Well, over time, the mission was so great, and the need and demand for chaplains of so many different faiths so great, that NCMAF changed its name to the General Commission on Chaplains and Military Personnel, and then in 1982 reorganized under its current banner. And since that time, of course, our numbers have grown. We have over 140 members. We represent probably 5,000 of the 6,000 military chaplains on active duty in the Guard and Reserve. And our goal is two things. One, to defend religious liberty and religious accommodation for all, regardless of how large or how small, when your Sabbath observance is, or what your rituals or rites are. And the second thing is to provide the best qualified chaplains possible for service to the nation. And that's pretty much it. And those are our rallying cries. And we consider that very seriously. We function together using professionalism, advocacy, community, and training to accomplish these two objectives.
Very good. It's a very proud organization. And Admiral Robinson, you mentioned today that to move this project forward, legislation was introduced in the Senate by Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia and John Bozeman of Arkansas. Tell us a little bit about the challenge. Arlington, since we did the Jewish Chaplains Project, was landmarked, new procedures put in place, but the legislation will allow this project to move forward. Tell us a little bit about the steps along the way and what we hope to accomplish.
Well, the steps along the way have been torturous, opaque. We have wonderful people struggling to preserve, who work for the Department of the Army, who are responsible to preserve Arlington National Cemetery and ensure that it's there to honor our sacred dead and to remind our country of their sacrifice. and they operate within both legislation and administrative regulation, but their sense is what's there is wonderful. If it isn't broke, don't fix it, don't change it. Once you start changing things, you don't know what's going to happen. And so every step along the way, there are very specific requirements that can be made more specific or less specific depending upon how you understand them. To the degree that the Protestant memorial, or I'll make it even easier, the Roman Catholic memorial left room at the bottom for the addition of additional names if needed. And there is another name, a Roman Catholic priest chaplain who died in operation in the Gulf in these war against terror. And all the Catholic Church needs to do is add a bronze plaque with that priest's name beneath the names of all the others. But that would, and by the way, the plaque would be, I'm guessing, 1 inch by 5 inches. But because that would change the historic monument that's been there 35 years, we have to go through all kinds of hoops to preserve the historic record of the existing monument. This is after we already proved that the chaplain is dead and died in service and all the other requirements. And then come up at the last moment, they say, oh, now we have another requirement, and that is that the requirement to establish a monument has to be 25 years after the date, after the event. But you're not establishing a new monument, but still, you can't add a name unless the person has been deceased 25 years. No, but that's 25 years is to establish a new monument. All we're doing is repairing and updating an existing monument. And so you start to arm wrestle about what those words mean. And a bill, one of the nice things about the American democracy is that if Congress says this is what that means, then you know what? That's what it means.
Well, back in 2011, we were able to get legislation approved by both houses of Congress. A lot of leadership from Congressman Jeff Miller of Florida, who was the House Veterans Affairs Committee chairman at the time. And what a proud moment that was for us who were down in Washington for that event. And we believe that Congress will again support this. It's bipartisan. It's something that almost everybody can agree to, the importance of recognizing the service of chaplains.
On the Jewish monument, Congressman Miller is, of course, a Republican from the panhandle of Florida, and the House had a Republican majority, and Patty Murray, who is the senator from the state of Washington, absolutely Democrat, and the Senate was in control of the Democrats. So we had a truly bipartisan, bicameral understanding that chaplains who have perished their names and honor need to be preserved, memorialized, and honored.
That's what's terrific about this. It's something that everybody can appreciate and agree to. And Jack Lee, we've had a lot of support on this project from various organizations. The American Legion just passed a national resolution number 17 in first week of May. Tell us a little bit about the support that has been attracted to this project.
Well, as a member of the Legion post nearby in McLean, where we live, I'm thrilled to say that the past national commander, Brett Reistad, who's also a Legion Post member with me there, played a pivotal role in first getting the Department of Virginia to consider a resolution. And then when they adopted it, they sponsored it to the national meeting. And we were treated with great kindness and respect by the Legion when we met with them on a Zoom conference call to discuss the history, the reasons behind our efforts, our commitment to this in terms of the granite stone to replace the concrete monument. And it's just wonderful when the nation's largest veteran organization gets behind something like this and speaks with one voice on this. We're also blessed to have the leadership and support of the Association of the United States Army. Most of the chaplains' names that would be added are Army chaplains, which is probably not a big surprise because the Army in ground combat is the one that really puts its chaplains most at risk because they engage in close proximity with the enemy. There's a few Air Force chaplain names and a handful of Navy names. I'd like to point out that one of those Navy chaplains I served with and I knew personally. So this is not just a professional interest for me. This is a personal debt that I feel very, very seriously about making sure his name is added. Because when America asked, the chaplains said yes and went forward. And now it's time for America to respond.
Jack, say his name.
Call. Ed Jack. Ed Jack. You probably knew that though, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Ed Jack.
So one of the other things to make sure that our viewers and listeners know is that Navy chaplains serve with the Marine Corps, which of course are also a ground combat element. And with the Coast Guard. Most of the chaplains are, it's about 50-50 between Navy and Marine Corps with, I don't know what the numbers are, probably 45%, 45% and 10% with the Coast Guard. But Navy chaplains are part of the mix. The Army is a chaplain corps probably twice the size of the Navy chaplain corps. And the Navy chaplain corps is about twice the size of the Air Force.
Correct.
And we joke amongst ourselves, amongst our chaplains, about the different natures of the ministry. So again, one of the wonderful things about being a Navy chaplain is the diversity of context. Coast Guard, Navy, Marine Corps, and then even within that, you've got the aviators in the Marine Corps, aviators in the Navy, very different than the submariners and the SEALs. So, and chaplains learn to translate religion into all of those, and faith and spirit, the life of the spirit, into all of those different, very different contexts and languages. And I got to tell you, you discover that we have wonderful, truly extraordinary young men and women, and I say young because they're all younger than I am, but who give so much, so willingly, and whose families contribute. The Colin Powell, I just heard an interview with General Powell. His first 10 years of married life, he was away from home 3.5 years. So, you know, and those were 1-year-long deployments. Vietnam, and I think it was Okinawa, but I'm not sure where the third one was. And that's pretty typical. You've got Navy chaplains, Navy sailors, not just chaplains, who go away on a 4-month cruise and don't get home for 9 months.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Tremendous service by members of the military, and the chaplains are with them as a source of of counsel and inspiration when times may be difficult, both for the service member and also for the families back at home.
And one other thing, the chaplain is probably the only person that the commander of the unit, the commanding officer, can go to and just be fully open with. Because when you're the commander of a 5,000 person or a 50 person unit, everybody's looking at you, eyes are always on you. And the ability of a chaplain to hear somebody's story in absolute and complete confidence and to hold on to that and to somehow manage everybody's anxiety, pain, joy, and faith, it requires extraordinary faith on the part of the chaplain as well. I'm sure Jack's been there.
Absolutely. I just want to take a moment. Jack, how many years of service did you have in the U.S. Navy as a chaplain?
Almost 29.
29. And how many different countries did you serve in? You told me about being in Djibouti.
Yeah, I was in Djibouti for 8 months in a tent. I lived in Japan for 3 years. And of course, Egypt, Israel, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Spain, Italy, France.
Did you get to the Seychelles?
No, didn't go to the Seychelles. Diego Garcia, Thailand, Korea, Guam, and lots of different states too. You know, Tennessee, Virginia, North Carolina.
Moving around.
I had 5 assignments with the Marines and 5 different ships, and believe it or not, 5 postings in the DC area. So it was a busy time, like a big steak, small bites, and before you know it, the plate's empty.
Yeah. And Admiral, I got to ask you just go through a little bit of your incredibly distinguished career in the U.S. Navy as a chaplain, often serving the Marines. Also, just a little bit of number of years and some of the places you served.
Well, a lot of my service was in the reserve component. What we discovered after 9/11 is the reserve component was a very active component to keep the whole process going. So after 9/11, I made it to Djibouti. I got to Djibouti before Jack did. I got to to Afghanistan and to northwest Iraq. But I've also served in the Persian Gulf. After 9/11, the high holidays came around in 2002, and I was supposed to be serving a congregation down in Louisiana. But I jumped on a plane and got out to the Persian Gulf for 6 weeks out there, bouncing around with being hosted by 2 wonderful chaplains, Mark Tibb, who later became chief of chaplains, and Bill Kennedy, who's a Boston priest with a big grin and smile, who got me around to all over the Persian Gulf, wherever we had more than just sailors and Marines and Coast Guardmen, but Air Force components. I was the chief rabbi of the Persian Gulf for 6 weeks. How do you say that in Hebrew? You know.
Well, that's terrific. Now, Admiral, maybe just again remind our audience how they can support the project, because as we now have a Senate bill launched just today by Senator Warnock and Senator Bosman, calling their member of Congress would be very helpful to ask for their support in co-signing this legislation. We hope we'll have legislation in the House very soon.
Well, especially calling their senators. Every senator has every single senator has an armed forces staff member, and calling and saying, hey, there's this Chaplains Hill memorial legislation. That's the title, Chaplains Hill memorial legislation. We'd be proud, Senator, if you would support it and lend your support to this effort. Just to remind you, there's no cost to the government. The money has already been raised, donated by wonderful Americans of all faiths and races and historic backgrounds. So we're not asking for money. We're just asking for a clear administrative path to do these updates and honor these. It happens that they're all men, and every senator has a military affairs member on his or her staff. And my job tomorrow is to call my two senators and say, hey, are you aware of this? And can you support it?
And we'll have the Senate bill number down in the comments to this interview. Jack Lee, do you have a final thought for us today? Memorial Day coming up this weekend.
Sure. Memorial Day is not like the day we celebrate in November, which used to be called Armistice Day in observance of the end of the First World War, and now it's called Veterans Day. Veterans Day is to honor all veterans. Memorial Day is to honor those who died. And that's what this effort is all about. So if you want to say thank you to someone who gave their life for their country, this is an easy opportunity for you to pick up the phone, send an email, make a call, write a letter, but let your elected representatives in Washington know that this is how you thank the military, by these sorts of observances and recognition. I love it when someone says, they see my license plate, which says disabled veteran, and says, oh, thank you for your service. I do love that. I appreciate that recognition. I'm grateful to receive it. I always say, proud to represent you. But this is a way to actually pay something forward to the families of those who lost loved ones who are never coming home from deployment or from war, and to make sure that their names are immortalized on the granite at Arlington Cemetery on Chaplains Hill.
Absolutely.
Jack, making that phone call, for anybody who makes that phone call between now and the weekend, will make that beer and hot dog or whatever is part of your Monday observation. It'll make the conversation so much more precious and meaningful, that it's not just about a beer and a hot dog. It is that, but it's about those who aren't with us, and who gave up the beer or the hot dog or the Coca-Cola or whatever it is.
Yeah, for all the Ed Jacks who didn't come home. For all the Ed Jacks who didn't come home.
And for all their families whose barbecue is a little more empty today.
Correct. Yeah.
Absolutely. I always think, and it's something that our historian, Greg Tardeau, has worked on, is that of the 6 Army chaplains lost in the Korean War that we seek to honor on the memorial, 3 remain missing in action to this day because we believe they died in captivity as prisoners of war, and their remains have not yet been found. So I always think of those 3, especially on a day like Memorial Day. Admiral Robinson, a rabbi up in the Cape Cod area, American Legion member. Do you have a final thought for us today?
From Psalms, eternal God, establish thou the work of our hands. Yea, the work of our hands, establish thou it. Eternal God, bless our work, bless our armed forces and their chaplains, and bless the United States of America.
Amen.
Amen. Very well said. I just want to thank both of our guests today. I've had the pleasure of working with on this committee to upgrade Chaplains Hill at Arlington National Cemetery, Section 2. And that is Chaplain Jack Lee, Executive Director of the National Conference on Ministry to the Armed Forces. And then also with us, Navy Rear Admiral Harold Robinson, former chair of the National Conference and chair of its Chaplains Hill project. And a pleasure to work with both of you and talk today.
God bless you, Ken.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate your friendship and your support as always.
And thank you both for your service to our country. And this is Ken Kraetzer again for Sons of the American Legion Radio. We're based at Post 135 in White Plains, New York, and we're always proud to represent the members of the American Legion and our fellow 330,000 members of the Sons of the American Legion serving America's veterans. Have a great day, and we'll see you on Memorial Day. Take care.